Hello, 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 everyone, and welcome to a very special episode of Echo Live, coming to you from the Michigan Science Center. My name is, as always, Anna, and I am coming to you from the Michigan Science Center's Echo Distance Learning Studio. Now, today is fantastic. It's a really happy day here for us in the studio because today is the first birthday of Echo Live. That means that for one whole year, we have been bringing live science programs to you over the internet, whether you are tuning in from your classroom, like some of our friends who are just starting to join us here on Facebook, if you are joining from home, or if you're joining from anywhere else, you are participating in a very special day for Echo Live. Now, we're so happy to have you here. So if you haven't done so already, go ahead, introduce yourself in the chat. Hello to Evan from Texas, one of our biggest fans of Echo Live. It is so good to see you chiming in the chat. So you can use the chat throughout our program today to answer questions and to play along in a couple games that I have planned to celebrate Echo Live's first birthday party. Now, we started Echo Live 1 year ago today, St. Patrick's Day of 2020, just as schools were closing down here in Michigan due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, I know many of us are back in school, but some of us are continuing to learn online. And so we are continuing to bring you these programs still this year. They are so much fun, and we have no plan to stop now. If you have no plans the week of spring break for us, which is March 29th through April 2nd, and you'd like to do even more in-depth science learning with the help of me and some of the other science educators here at the Michigan Science Center, registration for our virtual Spark Spring Break Camp is open now. So you can head to our website and you can do a search for camps and you can register to be a part of our virtual spring break camp, which is in less than 2 weeks. So there are still spots left. You can still sign up to participate in camp with us. And we hope that we'll get to see you there to teach you about even more really awesome science experiments like the ones we have planned for you today. Oh, I can see Evan is on spring break right now in Texas. That is awesome. So I was wondering why we were seeing you here today, but glad to see you off school. I hope you're enjoying your break. And now let's get into some of today's topic. Now, birthday parties over this past year, I know have been different. I know my birthday looked a lot different in October than it has in years past because we can't necessarily gather with our friends or go out and travel or do all sorts of the fun things that I'm sure we have planned for maybe our next birthday. But I actually got the chance to attend a few really fun virtual birthday parties over this past year. And so I thought we would have a virtual birthday party St. Patrick's Day show planned for everyone here today. The fun thing, or the first activity that I think we could try together, is doing some virtual birthday trivia. So if you're still thinking about maybe you have an upcoming birthday and haven't quite figured out how to celebrate it safely yet, playing birthday trivia is one great way that you can engage with people safely. You can still play games with your friends and your family, even if you can't gather together in person right now. So I have a few trivia questions all about past episodes of Echo Live. So if you've been tuning in from the beginning, you might know some of these answers. If you just recently started tuning in, don't worry, you might know some of these answers as well. Or of course, you can still guess. So let's start with question number 1 of Echo Live birthday trivia. And when you have decided your answer, you can just go ahead and type it in the chat. These will be multiple choice, so A, B, or C questions. And you can tell me what is your answer to your first trivia question. The first question I have for you all is about all of the time we've spent on Echo Live since last year. So question number 1, how many minutes has Echo Live streamed since the first episode? So remember, our first episode came out last year, March 17th, and we've done a lot of episodes since then. So tell me what you think. Has it been 578 minutes? Has it been 1,046 minutes? Or has it been 4,117 minutes of Echo Live? So take a moment. If you're in your classroom, go ahead and talk about it as a group. And when you're ready, you can go ahead and type that answer in the chat. How many minutes do you think we have been live since our first episode last year? We have a friend in Zoom who has voted for C. Still some people thinking through their answers a little bit here on Facebook and YouTube. As soon as you've got your answer, go ahead, type it in the chat. Give you about 10 more seconds, and then we will reveal the answer together. Is it 578 minutes? Is it 1,046 minutes? Or is it 4,117 minutes? The answer is 4,117 minutes of Echo Live so far. We've had 125 episodes, including this episode here today. So in fact, that minute count is climbing every second here. We've had 125 episodes. We've done all sorts of amazing experiments together, and I've gotten to see some experiments that you've tried out yourself at home. So the answer to question number 1 was C. That's over 70 hours of Echo Live. All right, question number 2 for Echo Live birthday trivia. How many people have hosted or appeared on Echo Live so far? So I'm not the only face that we see here on Echo Live. We also are regularly joined by Paulette, and you've all met a few other MySci educators like Julia and Raul. If you've been tuning into our show for the past year, you might know we've had quite a few guest stars. So your option for this one is how many people have guest starred on the show? Is it 6, 20, or 125? Go ahead, take a moment, think about your answer, think back through all of your Echo Live knowledge. Even if you're new to the show, you've gotten to meet some guest stars recently. So maybe you know or have a good guess about how many people have been on the show. Is it A, 6, B, 20, or C, 125? We have a friend in Zoom who has selected C, and the correct answer is 20. And counting though, right? So not quite 125 hosts or guest stars just yet, but we have had 125 episodes. Now, we've met all sorts of amazing experts who have appeared on the show, but we've also had lots and lots of MySci staff members join us as well. You might remember our Coding Unplugged dance party where we celebrated coding by coding a virtual chicken dance. So everyone on this call, we've got fellow MySci educators, members of our STEMinista project like Emmy and Andrea and Ashlyn. You might also recognize Christian, the president and CEO of the Michigan Science Center, who's taught us all about different space tools like sundials and moon dials. And Julia, who appears on the show pretty often as well to do awesome experiments and space storytime readings. We also did a Make Your Own Music Festival where we met some friends like Shannon and Julie and her son Tristan. And of course, though, this show would not be the same if it weren't for our very special expert guest stars. So you might remember Matt and Nancy from Exalta. We've also been joined by Megan from Exalta for a series of virtual planetarium programs. We've had Congresswoman Haley Stevens and Alyssa Space, who joined us for Black History Month. We've had Taylor, our friend from the Belle Isle Aquarium, and Dr. Pandy from Ford, who taught us all about autonomous vehicle technology. But of course, it wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't have been the same show at all if it weren't for my favorite guest star, which is, of course, my cat Keyboard. Keyboard has appeared on a couple episodes, one on accident when she snuck up on me in our static electricity episode. That could have been a little dangerous, but thankfully she came out right at the start of our show and we put her away safely. But she also starred in our Science Unleashed episode where we talked about the science of cats and dogs. So we've seen over 20 guest stars here on Echo Live so far, and we've got many more experts and special shows planned. So you'll continue to meet new faces here on the program the rest of this year. Let's get into our next question. Our third question of Echo Live virtual birthday trivia is, what was the very first experiment featured on Echo Live? The very first experiment. Your option is A, liquid nitrogen explosion, B, a dry ice pH change, or C, a rocket launch. So think way back. Remember, our first episode was on St. Patrick's Day, March 17th of last year, and we kicked it off with a really special episode. It was one of my all-time favorites. What was our very first experiment? If you don't know, you can always take a guess. Was it A, liquid nitrogen, B, dry ice, or C, a rocket launch? Evan, I'm sure you are an expert at this game since you have been tuning into Echo Live so often since the start of our show. A vote for C, a couple votes here. We've done all of these experiments here on Echo Live. The answer to the very first experiment that we did on Echo Live on episode number 1 was a dry ice pH change. We talked all about colorful chemistry on episode number 1, since rainbows and St. Patrick's Day go pretty well hand in hand. So of course I brought that experiment with me to show you all today. So if I go ahead and zoom out, I've got the same materials. You'll notice a couple materials on the table. We'll get to those ones in just a moment. But I've got my dry ice pH change experiment all set up and ready to go. So inside our big graduated cylinder here, I have water mixed in with some universal indicator. And if you remember back to episode number 1, or some of the other times we've talked about it since, universal indicator changes color based on whether it is touching an acid or a base. So the liquid in the beaker right now is green because it is neutral. Perfect color for St. Patrick's Day, but it's also the perfect color to blend in with my virtual background, which is causing a little bit of distortion there, but I'll try to stay right behind it. So we can see that right now, when we are mixing it with water, we have a neutral substance, and so the color is green. But if we add in some of our dry ice, and I just need a beaker here to grab some of it, we grab just a little bit of our dry ice and drop it down inside our universal indicator. Let's take a look at the color change that we get. That's not the view we want. Dun, dun, dun. If you remember, you could probably tell me what color our universal indicator will turn once we mix in our dry ice, our frozen CO2 or carbon dioxide. And we start to see a shift, right? As our dry ice sublimates or changes back into a gas from a solid, it starts to create carbon dioxide gas inside the water beaker. A chemical reaction then forms between the carbon dioxide gas and the liquid water and forms what we know as carbonic acid. So carbonic acid is, of course, an acid, which means that our pH has lowered, which is why we are observing now a color change in our universal indicator. So this is a great experiment that we used to kick off the show. If you have any questions about dry ice or our pH change, definitely, as always, feel free to type them in the chat. But let's head back to our last trivia question of our Echo Live birthday party trivia. So our last question here in our trivia game is not about the first experiment we ever did. Instead, my question is, what was the messiest experiment I've ever done here on Echo Live? And I have made some big messes. Let me tell you, I've definitely made bigger messes than I've planned to, but if that was ever a lesson in science, let it be a lesson to you all to try science. It's okay if it gets a little bit messy, because that means we're having fun and we're learning something, as long as we're being safe and do a good job cleaning up later. So if you think through all of the experiments that I've done, which do you think was the messiest? Was it A, the liquid nitrogen explosion? Was it B, elephant toothpaste? Or was it C, the pumpkin cannon? So again, all awesome experiments, some of my absolute favorites, but also some of the messiest I've ever done. But one of these was way, way, way messier than all of the others. Do you think it was A, the liquid nitrogen explosion, B, the elephant toothpaste reaction, or C, the pumpkin cannon? We've got a vote in Zoom for A, liquid nitrogen. Any votes coming in on Facebook? Send them in now. Evan thinks C, the pumpkin cannon. They were all very messy experiments. So definitely none of these none of these are safe to do at home. That's why we do them here on Echo Live. They make a huge mess, but they can also be a little bit dangerous, each of these experiments. So let's see, anyone else have a vote? The answer was, in fact, the liquid nitrogen explosion. Now, if you said the pumpkin cannon, you were very close. It was actually from the same episode, or I think in this episode, for our 50th episode extravaganza, I was blowing up all sorts of fruit using chemistry. So we did elephant toothpaste, we did combustion or fire reactions, but this was the messiest experiment I have ever done by far. I decided to carve out a pumpkin like you'd carve out a pumpkin on Halloween, fill it with a liquid nitrogen water bottle, and then dump in some ping pong balls. If you remember this experiment, you might remember that it took a little while to go off, but when it did, it was awesome. So let's take a look at that experiment. Here is my reaction all set up. We don't necessarily need the sound here. And it took a little while for it to go off. We were starting to get worried that maybe we had a leak in the bottle, but that wasn't the case. Right now, the pressure inside our liquid nitrogen container, which is buried underneath all of those ping pong balls, the pressure is building as that liquid nitrogen boils. But it took a lot longer than we thought, and so I decided to pour in just a little bit of warm water and watch what happened next. Kaboom! Messiest experiment I have ever done on the show, but particularly in my house, because if you remember back to that time, that was actually when I was streaming Echo Live from my house. So much like all of you, when schools closed down and we had to start learning from home, I actually had to pack up the distance learning studio and present from my home as well. So it's unfortunate that the messiest experiment I ever have done happened in my house, but it was still pretty cool. So if you haven't seen that episode, go back and check it out. It's available on our Facebook and our YouTube. That was episode number 50. It happened last summer, and that was by far the messiest experiment I've ever done. I was picking watermelon shards off of everything for weeks. I bet still to this day, if I went down in my basement, I could find some more watermelon that I could pick off of the ceiling or off of the floor. But elephant toothpaste is what I have set up here on the table. It's not the messiest experiment I've ever done, but it is one of the messiest experiments that I know how to do. And in honor of our 1-year anniversary of our colorful chemistry episode, and since it is St. Patrick's Day and talking about rainbows is such a big part of this holiday, if you are celebrating it at all in school, rainbows are a perfect thing to end out our show. So instead of doing just one elephant toothpaste reaction, I thought, why not go for one of the biggest messes I've ever made? Maybe today will top my liquid nitrogen explosion. So I have 6 containers right now that are pre-mixed between some of our hydrogen peroxide, the main ingredient in an elephant toothpaste reaction, and food coloring. So I set it up very scientifically. We've got our red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple, all of the colors of the rainbow. And since I'm preparing for this one to make a pretty big mess, the gloves are here to protect me from the food coloring, but also to protect me from the hydrogen peroxide. If you are familiar with elephant toothpaste, you know that it takes a pretty powerful chemical to give us the reaction that we're looking for. Hydrogen peroxide is a great ingredient for this experiment because it is very rapidly decomposing, turning from hydrogen peroxide back into water and oxygen gas. Now, of course, it's happening right now just because there is heat and energy and light inside this room that's helping to start break down our peroxide. However, this reaction takes a pretty long time. If we waited for about 6 months or even a year until the next birthday party for Echo Live, by the time we got there, this would have turned all the way back into water mixed with a little bit of food coloring. But of course, we don't have that kind of time. We've got a whole nother year of Echo Live episodes for us to try together before then. So instead, we are going to speed up our reaction. We'll do that by adding in a catalyst. When we add our catalyst, which I have pre-made here inside these smaller containers, it's a yellow liquid that's called potassium iodide. So if you've heard of iodide or iodine, you might know at the doctor's office, if you rub it on your skin, it's a very dark kind of yellow, almost brown color. And this is actually what is going to speed up our chemical reaction here. So instead of taking 6 months to a year, as soon as I mix our catalyst, our potassium iodide, in with our hydrogen peroxide, our reaction should rapidly decompose in less than 6 seconds. So it's going to be important that I pour them one at a time, moving very quickly and then stepping out of the way. And let's see what kind of colorful chemistry birthday reaction we get. So here we go. We'll do all of them in rapid succession because you'll find out it makes a pretty big mess. Here we go in 3, 2, 1. Ta-da! Now the green is, of course, going right along with my virtual background, and maybe even if I stand behind it, the camera's not blurry right now. What you're seeing is an incredible amount of steam. So not only did we rapidly decompose our hydrogen peroxide, but when we did that, it also created an incredible amount of heat. So basically what we had was boiling hot water. So hot that I'm definitely not going to reach down and touch that in my hands. It's going to be really, really hot. But hopefully this was a great way to end our episode because now I've got another one of those big messes to clean up here inside the studio today. So this is just about the end of Echo Live's first birthday party, but don't worry, we're not going anywhere. This is, of course, the time of the program that we want to say thank you to the sponsors of Echo Live. Thank you to Ford and Denso, who have sponsored Echo Live, allowed us to continue bringing you all these programs, whether you are back learning in school or if you are still learning at home right now. Last reminder, if you'd like to sign up for My Size Spark Camps, you can do so on our website. And otherwise, we will be back here next week with a very special virtual planetarium program with Paulette to talk all about the stars and the constellations that are going to be visible in the springtime sky. So it's been a little while since we've talked about what's out in the nighttime sky tonight. And so next Wednesday, Paulette will join us to tell us what you can go out and see yourself as our seasons are starting to change. So thank you everyone so much for tuning in to Echo Live today. I hope I'll see you all back here next week and every Wednesday for the rest of the year. Of course, you can watch all of these videos online if you aren't able to tune in live, but we hope we'll see you again very soon. Have a happy St. Patrick's Day and happy